But in order to be world class, you can't just be a chief officer. You have to crush the two middle letters, the information security. And a lot of folks, especially people that come from a security engineering background, have trouble switching and thinking differently about that information security piece. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, my friends. You know what time it is, or at least I hope you know what time it is. It's time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. I hope you are doing awesome. I hope you are crushing it. I hope you are exceeding all of your goals, targets, and expectations. But before I get into today's topic, which is the key weapon of a CISO is risk, because what I want to do is talk a little bit more about the IS part of CISO. If you've been listening to my last few episodes, I've been focusing a lot on the outer layers, chief officer. And what does that really mean to be a chief officer and to think and act like a business professional? But in order to be world class, you can't just be a chief officer. You have to crush the two middle letters, the information security. And a lot of folks, especially people that come from a security engineering background, have trouble switching and thinking differently about that information security piece. So that's really what I want to talk about, is how to really think, act, and behave as an information security officer that is aligned with being a chief executive at the company. But before I do that, I always like checking in and seeing where are you at with achieving your goals. Just sort of go back in a time machine. This is not anything that I want any emotion around it. I just want it to be factual. And remember, if this is a friend, because when we deal with ourselves, we tend to be more critical, have regrets, or overcomplicate things. So imagine it's a friend or an acquaintance that you really don't have a tight connection with, and you're just factually looking at what they're saying. So just go back to January timeframe on what you wanted to achieve professionally. And you can do this in all areas, but I'm really focusing on the cybersecurity professional business side of the house. So in January, when you're sitting there and looking at this year, looking at these brand new crisp months that we call 2023, what were your goals, your targets, your aspirations for this year? Once again, no emotion, just factual. Did you want to become a CISO? Are you not a CISO and you want to get your first job as a CISO? Are you a CISO and you wanted to move up to a bigger company? Were you starting off as a CISO and you wanted to better integrate into your business and be more effective business leader within your enterprise? Did you want to switch from being an employee to an employer and actually start your own business doing vCISO or other services? Just whatever that is, try to articulate it in a factual, measurable manner as much as you can. Then, today, where are you currently at? Where are you currently at? What is your current job? What is your current position? What are you currently making? All those factors, and just compare the two. Compare the two, and you can break it down into factual pieces. So what was the job in January? What was the job title you wanted for this year? What was the salary? What was the position? What was the feeling? Any of those things that are as measurable as we can get, you want to just list in those categories of what you wanted for this year 6 months ago or 7 months ago, or almost 8 months, right? Depending on where we're going, or almost, I guess, 9 months now. I forget where already I'm recording this. We're in August heading into September, so I guess it's 8 going into 9. So we're getting ready to switch, you ready, into that last quarter of the year, right? You got one more month left in quarter 3, and then you have 3 months after that, quarter 4. So we still got plenty of time, but it's also a good time to check in and see. So just compare. What did you want to achieve in January? And where are you currently at today? And then just look at the gaps. Just look at the gaps between each one of those categories. And maybe there aren't any gaps. Maybe you're in a position that some people are in where there's 2 types of folks. I find it very rare that there are the third type, which is people that are very correct and accurate and realistic with their targets, and they hit them exactly on December. Most people either underplay or overplay, right? They do one of those 2 things. They're either way too conservative and you crush it by mid-year, or they're basically making 5-year goals into 1-year goals, which I'm very big on pushing the envelope, but can sometimes get to the point where it's just not possible to do, even though everything is possible, right? So it's usually one of those 2 areas. So if you're in that first where you've already crushed it, then you need to reset. You need to reset and set new 4-month goals. If you're that person that just overshot it, you were doing 5-year goals in 1 year, and once again, I'm not trying to get you off the hook, but here's what I want to avoid. I want to avoid a situation where you've basically given up. What you thought you wanted to do over the next 12 months was so ridiculously out of scope of a 12-month period. It could be done in 5, it could be done in 10, but it's just so out of scope that you're sitting here 8 months, 7 months into the year, and you're looking at that, and there is no possible way, no matter what happens, in your mind, you think you can accomplish it, and you've given up. That's the worst place to be, because then you're just going to basically spin your wheels for the next 3 to 4 months because you've given up already. You're just like, it's not going to happen. I'm so frustrated. I'm so mad. I'm so angry. You get yourself in a rut and you've basically just given up. I don't want that to happen. So if that's you, reset. What is more realistic? What is something that you can get behind that you believe if you push the envelope, it can be done, but it's going to require you to put in a lot of effort. One of the rules I always use when we talk about these goals is we always sort of say we want to have sort of impossible goals. And what I mean by that is they're a little beyond your reach, but if you push it, you believe you can accomplish it. That's the sweet spot. You don't want your targets or goals to be so simple and easy that you can keep doing what you're doing. Because there's more. There's so much more inside of you. I want you to press that gas pedal a little bit more. But on the other hand, I don't want it to the point where it's so ridiculous and crazy that you can't imagine any way doing it, that even if the gas pedal is to the ground, there's no way you could possibly achieve that, because then you're just going to give up and get frustrated. So we need something in between that's pushing it beyond where you are today to a point that's a little beyond what you think you can achieve, because it's going to push you, but you still believe that you can do it. You still know, you wake up in the morning going, I can crush this, right? I can do this, right? I got this. You know, it's going to require me to change and become someone different than who I am today. But I absolutely believe that with a little extra energy and effort, I can absolutely do that. That's where you want to be. So I want you to just look at and say, is a reset necessary? Is it necessary to reset your targets and where you're at? So you look at what you set in January, where you are today. If that gap is still reasonable, you're going, Eric, I need to change some things. I need to do some things differently than what I'm doing today, but I believe I can hit that. Awesome. Then keep going. But most folks are going to be either you've already met them or you're looking at that gap and you're just going, not going to happen. Now, here's the most important part if you're in that second group, where right now you're looking at that gap and it's just too far for 4 months. You're like, even if I pushed the envelope to extremes, I do not see any possible way of accomplishing that, and you're basically feeling hopeless. This is where you will readjust, and it's the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing for me to do. It's taken me a lot of energy and effort to do this, but you have to do it from a place of appreciation and compassion. No judgment. Now, the reason why this gap could be so big is it could be that what you set in January was just too much, and you've been crushing it for the last 8 months. So it is possible you've been crushing it, you've been pushing the envelope, but it was just too big an appetite in January and you need to readjust. Most people, unfortunately, even if that's true, the folks that we are overachievers. That's what makes us so good at being cybersecurity and chief information security officers. But because we're overachievers, regardless of whether that's true or not, what almost all of us tend to do, and everyone I work with does this, is go, oh, Eric, if only I would have stepped it up in February and March. If only I would have started doing this in May, I wouldn't be here. But I basically fell asleep at the wheel. I didn't do what I should have. And you get into this regret mode, which is poison to your system. I don't care what happened. I don't care what occurred. I don't care if you did drop the ball or not. Most likely you didn't, and you're your own worst critic. Regardless, you need to sit there and say, I did the best I could for the first 8 months. I honor and appreciate what I did, and I am now going to reset and crush it for the remainder 4 months of the year. And that you must do. It is not easy, but you must do it, because if you don't let go and you don't do a reset, you will stay stuck, and that will continue to haunt you and cause you not to execute. The last 8 months were what they were. You did more than you realize. You're not giving yourself enough credit. I can guarantee it, because every one of my one-on-one coaching clients that I work with that come in that way, after 30 minutes of me asking them, well, didn't you accomplish this? Didn't you do this? And I help them see what they're not able to see. They realize they did so much more than they thought they did. And that's true for everybody. So you just got to reset it, get a new plan, figure out what are the key things that will pivot or change the entire trajectory of your career. And here's where I don't want you to overthink. I don't want you to go in and you need this super complex plan. Here's what I do with my clients. If you're in that situation where you're not where you want to be, you're a little frustrated, the analogy I give is that you're basically stuck. You're a boat that you've gotten to a safe point and you've anchored your boat in the harbor. So your boat is currently anchored in the harbor. Now, when people get stuck, what do they often want to do? They want to figure out this detailed plan. Okay, what are the exact steps? What are the things? And it gets so complicated, they just aren't able to process it. Here's all I want you to focus on. And this is what I do with my clients. How do we get you to lift the anchor? And how do we get the boat moving out of the harbor and towards the direction? Right now, for the next month, if you are stuck, that's all I want you to do. How do we start getting that anchor up? How do we start the boat moving? get out of the harbor, get into the open seas, and let's just get headed in the right direction. That's all I want you to focus on. Don't worry about where you're going, the details, because it's way too complicated. If we can get you to get that anchor up, to get unstuck, to start thinking differently and doing things, and then I can get that boat moving, and I can get you out of that safe harbor where you're actually enjoying and liking the challenges of your job again. You're enjoying what you're doing. That's getting out of the harbor and then just moving in the right direction. That's a huge win. Because guess what? If that's all we did, and then you just kept moving towards your destination in 4 months, and that's all you did was kept the boat moving, you're so much more farther than where you are today. So let's not overcomplicate things. Let's just figure out, how do we get unstuck? How do we get out of the current routine we're into a new routine? And how do we start enjoying, liking, and loving what our current job is? And then boom, we are on target for doing amazing things. So now that we sort of got you going, got you excited, got the anchor up, the second part is really talking about, what does it mean to be a world-class information security person? Now remember, it's in the context of chief officer, not security engineer. So I don't want to forget about the CNO, but I feel like I've spent a lot of the episodes on the chief officer. And before every episode, I always go in and just sort of think about patterns that I'm seeing with my clients, patterns I'm seeing when I do my V-Lives, patterns I'm seeing with feedback. I also do, don't judge me, but I care about you a lot, that I do even a little meditation where I try to connect with each of you energetically to see what is it that everyone really needs. And I just felt like today I was really getting a lot of, we've focused a lot on the chief officer. Let's go a little deep on that information security piece. So being an information security chief officer, your primary weapon is risk. Whether you like it or not, realize it or not, you are in the risk management business. Risk is the probability of loss. Risk is what is going to happen in the future. You are basically saying, okay, what is the probability that some event in the future is or is not going to happen? World-class CISOs mastered the art of risk prediction. The reason why clients and executives will pay me so much money is because I have mastered the art of predicting and understanding what is going to happen in a risk component and help organizations say, here's what you need to focus on, ignore these. So I can go into an organization and they can either do it or we can do it, and they could have 30 risks. And I could understand the organization, understand the environment, understand what's happening, and I could say, okay, these are the two you need to invest in. These are the two you need to spend energy and effort on. Those other ones are so unlikely from happening. And even if they do, the impact is so low that you don't really want to worry about those. You can accept those. Accept those risks. That's okay. But these are the two that you absolutely have to fix. And I've been doing it so long that you do it with such a level of precision and accuracy that all of a sudden the executive team trusts you. They trust you, your knowledge and expertise, that if you say these are the two risks you have to focus on, then they're going to believe you. And that's when you've reached the nirvana of being a world-class CISO. So question, how do you do it? So let's take risk and let's break it down. There's many different formulas that are used for risk, but the most common one is risk equals threat times vulnerability. That is a great definition for a security engineer. It's super technical, and super tactical. But for a chief information security officer, it's too technical and too tactical. We need to take it up a level. So if we take our formula, risk equals threat times vulnerability, that's tactical, and we translate it to a strategic standpoint, what do we get? Risk is offense and defense. What can the offense do, and how well do we defend against it? What is the offense going to do to us, and what is our current defensive plan or weaknesses in that defensive plan that would allow that threat to be able to manifest itself against us? So that's really what we're constantly doing as a CISO. We're constantly looking at all these different threats, all these different offensive things that could be thrown against us, and say, okay, based on all of these and based on our current defensive measures we have, where are weaknesses that would allow them to be able to get in? Because the way we deal with risk is by addressing or fixing the weaknesses. We really can't go in and control what the offense is going to do. I really can't go in and stop the offense from doing something. It's a data point that we need. But what I control and what I can fix is my defensive weaknesses. So that's what I always look at. What are those weaknesses that exist that I need to potentially pay more attention to? And here's the master skill. You start looking for patterns. You start looking for repetitive vulnerabilities that are consistent with every single offensive threat that's out there. So if I'm doing this analysis and I have 30 main offensive threats, I take each one. Okay, if this offensive capability or threat hit our organization, how well could we defend? Where are the weaknesses? And how could they get in? And I take the next one, the next threat, the next threat. And as I'm doing this, I'm looking for a pattern going, almost every one of these is focused on the fact that our data is accessible from the internet. Or every one of these is focused on the fact that we have inconsistent patching across our organization. So now we're starting to see patterns and go, if I fix this one defensive weakness, then 60% or 70% of those offensive capabilities go away or disappear. That's where you start getting really into that superpower CISO. And I'll give you another trick. Go beyond the symptom and get to the root cause. So if we're going in and we keep saying, well, it's because the system is out of date, or we're missing patches, or we're not running the latest version of the operating system, those are really symptoms. Because here's the issue. If I go in and I update this piece of software, does it really fix the problem? No, because what's going to happen in 6 months? Another piece of software is going to be outdated. So we're really just popping painkillers, right? We're treating the symptom of the issue and not the actual issue. Here's how you know the difference between symptom and root cause. A symptom, if you treat it, another one will come back. Another one's going to come back. A root cause, if you fix it, it's done. It doesn't return. So what is really the root cause in all those issues? The root cause in all those issues is very simple. Automated configuration management. If we had automated configuration management, where all of our systems were updated, patched, locked down automatically, When new versions came out, we tested, validated, rolled it out, but it automatically updated everything. We automatically patched everything. We automatically kept all our services up to date. And by the way, we also had automated software that if any system failed to meet any of those compliance regulations and was out of date for more than 30 or 40 days, they automatically got disconnected from the network. They automatically got isolated on a separate VLAN. Now we're getting in to world class because now we're treating the root cause in a way where it's automated and doesn't rely on humans or individuals in order for it to work correctly. And that's how we start viewing and looking at the security. Now, a couple of other secrets to mastering the art of predicting risk. We said risk is mainly composed of threats and vulnerabilities, offense, defense. But here's the secret sauce. This is the KFC 11 herbs and spices. Now, if you ever go in, what makes KFC so good is their secret blend of 11 herbs and spices. Now, here's the good news. Your secret recipe to risk only has 2 herbs and spices. It only has 2 secret ingredients. So the 2 secret ingredients are likelihood and impact. So now we're going in and saying, okay, there's all these threats. There could be not only tens of threats, but tens of hundreds of threats that are out there. And here's where CISOs get into what we call either the drowning or the chasing the shiny object. If we don't have a proper way of doing it, CISOs will try to go after all of them, and it'll be a tsunami that just crushes them to the bottom, and they're just running in circles. Or they pick one threat. We've seen this for a while where a lot of CISOs, the shiny little object was ransomware. Everything ransomware. It's like, what ransomware? It doesn't matter what the question. The answer was always ransomware, right? And they got so caught up on it, they lost sight of everything else. So here's the trick. The way you avoid those 2 issues with threats is likelihood. What is the likelihood of this occurring? What is the likelihood of this happening? Because the reality is, the reason I'm really good at predicting risks to an organization is because I first go in and say, okay, I know here's all these risks, but this big chunk here, that likelihood is so low based on the business you're in, how you operate, the parameters, the security, and everything else you have, that we're just going to take these and just push them aside. And then we have this group here, and I'm going to reprioritize, and honestly, out of this group, only these 3, based on the environment, how you operate, and all those other factors, these are the only 3 that have a likelihood that's more than 80%. So let's focus on those. So that's the first secret. Using likelihood to filter out threats to the organization that are low probability events. The second secret that we look at is, okay, so now we've gone in and we've identified a few of the threats with a high likelihood. Now we map that back to our analysis and say, okay, what are the root cause vulnerabilities that are all in common with these? And we go through and say, okay, there's 9 different root cause vulnerabilities that are all at play with these threats with high likelihood. And then here's the second secret sauce. Which of those vulnerabilities, if exploited, would have the biggest impact to our organization? And now we take that 9 and we whittle it down to 2 or 3. And those now become the area we focus on. So now by taking threats or offense with highest likelihood and the defense or vulnerabilities with the biggest impact, and we run this filtering, we now get a very small list that's very accurate. And that becomes our focus, and that becomes what we present to the board. And then remember, what we present to the board is not, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. World-class CISOs are honest brokers. What we present to the board is this. Here is the value and benefit of doing X. Whether X is rolling out a new system, implementing a new customer database, providing new services, providing new support. But whatever the decision is, here's the value or benefit of doing this. Here's the risk or exposure of doing this. Is the value or benefit worth the risk or exposure? That's really the simple question. If the value and benefit is not worth it, we don't do it. If the value or benefit is worth it, we do need to do this. Then we present the next layer, which is, okay, we believe we need to do this, but just so you know, if we do this, this creates a scenario where we have a 90% chance of this risk happening. If it occurs, it's going to cost us $8 million, and I want $200K to reduce that risk. So now that we've said we want to do this, now the question is, do we accept the risk on surface, 90% chance of losing $8 million, or do we want to spend a couple $100K to reduce that risk to a more acceptable level? And that's how you turn risk into a strategic weapon as a CISO. You're using it to do analysis. You're breaking it down into the offense, defense. You're using your likelihood and impact, and then you're doing that two-step process to present it to the executives. And if you tie that with what we've been talking about of how to be a world-class chief officer, with now being a world-class information security professional, you will truly be a world-class chief information security officer.